The boy I was babysitting was pointing at the dark hallway upstairs. His small finger was shaking. "Don't go up there," he whispered. I looked toward the stairs. The hallway light was off, and the whole second floor was dark. "Why not?" I asked softly. The boy's face had turned pale. "Because the man who was watching me earlier went up there." My heart skipped. "What man?" I asked. The boy slowly turned his head toward me. The man who was standing in the living room window. I felt cold all over. Because I had been sitting in the living room all night. And nobody had come inside the house. At least, I thought nobody had. But what happened later that night would become one of the scariest babysitting stories I have ever told. And the worst part is, that wasn't the only terrifying babysitting night I experienced. Because over the next few months, 2 more babysitting jobs would turn into nightmares. 3 nights. 3 houses. 3 terrifying babysitting horror stories that I will never forget. But the first one happened on a cold October night in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. My name is Emily Parker. When this happened, I was 16 years old and in high school. Babysitting was my main way to earn money after school. Most of the time, babysitting was easy. Kids watch cartoons. You make snacks. You wait for the parents to come home. Nothing scary ever happens. Or at least that's what I thought before that night. The family lived in a large 2-story house at the end of a quiet street. The parents were named Sarah and David. Their son's name was Lucas. He was only 6 years old. When I first arrived, everything felt normal. Sarah showed me around the house. "The snacks are in the kitchen," she said kindly. Lucas usually falls asleep around 9. Lucas was sitting on the couch watching cartoons. He smiled at me and waved. "Hi." I waved back. "Hi, Lucas." David grabbed his jacket. "We should be back around midnight," he said. "Call us if anything happens." I nodded. "Okay." Soon the parents left. The house became quiet. At first the night felt completely normal. Lucas and I watched cartoons together. Then we built a small Lego tower on the floor. After a while he yawned. "Are you tired?" I asked. He nodded. So I walked him upstairs to his bedroom. His room was small but cozy. There were toy cars on the floor and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I tucked him into bed. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night." I turned off the light and closed the door. Then I went downstairs. The house felt peaceful. I sat on the couch and scrolled through my phone. Outside, the wind moved the trees. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Until about an hour later. That's when Lucas called from upstairs. "Emily." His voice sounded nervous. I walked to the bottom of the stairs. "Yes." "Can you come here?" I walked upstairs and opened his door. Lucas was sitting up in bed. "What's wrong?" I asked. He looked toward the hallway. "Someone knocked on my window." I frowned. His room was on the 2nd floor. "Nobody could knock on your window," I said gently. He looked scared. "I heard it." I checked the window. Nothing was there. Just the dark backyard. "You probably heard a tree branch," I said. Lucas nodded slowly. "Okay." I tucked him in again and went downstairs. But something about what he said made me uneasy. Still, I tried to relax. I turned on the TV quietly and sat on the couch. Another 30 minutes passed. Then Lucas called again. "Emily." This time he sounded more scared. I ran upstairs. He was sitting up again. "Emily." Someone was whispering outside my door. My stomach tightened. "What did it say?" I asked. Lucas swallowed. It said, "Lucas, open the door." A cold chill ran down my back. "That was probably the TV," I said quickly. But Lucas shook his head. It sounded like a man. I checked the hallway. Nobody was there. The house was silent. Still, I left the hallway light on before going downstairs again. The clock now said 10:47 p.m. I started to feel nervous. But nothing else happened for a while. Around 11:20 p.m., I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The kitchen window faced the backyard. As I walked past it, I saw something. A shape. Standing near the fence. A person. I froze. The backyard light was off, but the moonlight showed enough for me to see a tall figure standing still. Just watching the house. My heart started beating faster. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe someone walking a dog. But the person wasn't moving. They were just standing there. Then slowly, they stepped closer to the house. I backed away from the window. My hands started shaking. I quickly locked the back door. Then I turned off the kitchen light. Maybe if they thought nobody was awake, they would leave. I waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Finally I looked outside again. The yard was empty. The person was gone. I felt a small wave of relief. Maybe they had just walked away. I returned to the living room. But the relief didn't last long. Because 5 minutes later, Lucas screamed upstairs. "Emily!" I ran upstairs as fast as I could. Lucas was crying. "What happened?" I asked. He pointed toward his bedroom window. "The man." My chest tightened. "What man?" "The one outside." I looked out the window quickly. The backyard looked empty. But Lucas grabbed my arm. "No, not outside." Slowly, his finger moved toward the hallway. He came inside. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Lucas whispered. "I saw him walk past my door." My heart started pounding. That's when we both heard something downstairs. A slow creaking sound. Like a floorboard bending under someone's weight. Lucas looked at me with wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" I nodded slowly. Another creak echoed through the house. From the living room. Someone was walking downstairs. And that was the moment I realized something truly terrifying. The front door was still locked. The back door was still locked. Which meant only one thing. Whoever was inside the house had already been there before I arrived. And then the footsteps started moving toward the stairs. The footsteps on the stairs stopped. Lucas grabbed my arm tightly. His small hands were shaking. "Emily, someone is coming," he whispered. I held my breath and listened. For a few seconds, the house was completely silent again. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the house was just old and making noises. But then we heard it again. Creak. Another step on the stairs. Slow. Heavy. Like someone was trying not to make noise. Lucas began to cry quietly. "Make him go away," he said. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might faint. I tried to stay calm because Lucas was looking at me for help. "It's okay," I whispered, even though I didn't believe it. Another creak came from the stairs. Then another. The sound was getting closer. Someone was walking up the stairs. I looked around the hallway quickly. There were 3 doors upstairs. Lucas's room, the bathroom, and the parents' bedroom. "Stay here," I told Lucas. But he shook his head fast. "No." He grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. I didn't blame him. I didn't want to be alone either. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then they stopped. Right outside the hallway. Lucas and I stood frozen in his doorway. The hallway light was on, but the stairs were dark. We waited. Nothing happened. Then a shadow slowly appeared on the wall. Someone was standing at the top of the stairs. Lucas gasped quietly. The shadow moved. Then a man stepped into the hallway. I had never seen him before. He was tall and thin. He wore dark clothes and a dirty jacket. His hair was messy, and his eyes looked strange and tired. For a moment, he just stared at us. Nobody spoke. Then he smiled. It was the creepiest smile I had ever seen. "Hey there," he said softly. Lucas hid behind me. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to speak. "Who are you?" I asked. The man tilted his head. "I was just looking for the bathroom," he said. My stomach twisted. "You need to leave," I said quickly. The man didn't move. Instead, he slowly took a step toward us. Lucas squeezed my hand harder. "Please go," I said louder. The man laughed quietly. Relax, he said. I'm not going to hurt anyone. But something about his voice felt wrong. Very wrong. Then he looked down at Lucas. Oh, there you are, he said. Lucas started crying. The man took another step forward. I quickly pulled Lucas into his bedroom and slammed the door shut. Then I locked it. The doorknob rattled almost immediately. The man was outside. Come on, he said through the door. Open up. Lucas was shaking so badly he could barely breathe. I grabbed my phone and quickly dialed 911. My hands were shaking so much it was hard to hold the phone. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Finally a voice answered. 911. What is your emergency? There's a man in the house. I whispered quickly. Someone broke in. The operator's voice became serious. Are you in a safe room? Yes, I said. We're locked in a bedroom upstairs. The doorknob shook again. Harder this time. Please hurry, I said. We are sending officers right now, the operator said. Stay on the phone. The man outside the door suddenly stopped rattling the handle. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then he spoke again. But his voice sounded different now. Lower. Angrier. I know you're in there. Lucas buried his face in my arm. I tried to stay calm. We called the police, I said loudly. Silence. Then the man laughed. A slow, creepy laugh. You think they'll get here in time, he said. My heart dropped. Suddenly the door shook violently. Bang. The man kicked the door. Lucas screamed. Bang. Another kick. The wood cracked slightly. I backed away, pulling Lucas with me. The operator's voice came through the phone. Stay calm. Officers are on the way. But the man kicked the door again. Bang. A small crack appeared near the lock. Lucas was crying loudly now. The man stopped kicking. For a second, the hallway was quiet again. Then we heard footsteps moving away from the door. I felt a tiny bit of relief. Maybe he had left. But then we heard something worse. The sound of a window opening. My stomach twisted. The parents' bedroom had a balcony, and the balcony connected to the roof above the garage, which meant he could climb around the outside of the house. Lucas looked up at me with wide eyes. Emily. I slowly turned toward the bedroom window. The curtains moved slightly. Something was touching the glass. A shadow slid across the window. Lucas screamed again. Then a loud tapping sound came from the glass. Tap, tap, tap. A face suddenly appeared outside the window. It was the same man. He was standing on the roof outside, smiling at us through the glass. And then he slowly started trying to open the window. The man's face was pressed against the window. Lucas screamed and buried his face in my arm. I could feel his whole body shaking. The man outside the window smiled wider. His breath fogged the glass. Tap, tap, tap. He knocked slowly like he was enjoying the moment. Open the window, he whispered. I stepped backward, pulling Lucas with me. No. I shouted. The man tried the window handle. At first it didn't move. Then he pulled harder. The window rattled loudly. Lucas started crying again. Emily, he's coming in. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The 911 operator was still on the line. Police are almost there, she said. Stay away from the window. I grabbed Lucas and moved us to the far side of the room. The man outside began pushing harder. The window frame creaked. Crack. A small split appeared in the wood. Lucas cried louder. He's breaking it. The man's smile disappeared. Now he looked angry. He slammed his shoulder against the glass. Bang. The whole window shook. Bang. Another hit. The glass began to crack. Lucas held onto me tightly. Please don't let him get me, he whispered. I won't, I promised, even though I was terrified. The man hit the window again. Bang. A spider web of cracks spread across the glass. The operator spoke again through the phone. Officers are turning onto the street right now. I prayed they would get there in time. The man lifted his arm and slammed the glass with his elbow. Crash. The window shattered. Cold night air rushed into the room. Lucas screamed. The man pushed his arm through the broken glass and reached for the lock. I grabbed a desk chair nearby and shoved it against the window. "Get back!" I shouted. The man growled and pushed harder. His hand grabbed the top of the chair. He tried to pull it away. I pushed with all my strength. Lucas was crying behind me. Then suddenly, we heard something outside. Sirens. Police sirens. The man froze. For a second he just stared at me through the broken window. Red and blue lights flashed outside the house. The sirens grew louder. The man looked toward the street. Then he quickly pulled his arm back through the broken glass. I heard his footsteps running across the roof. The operator spoke again. "The police are there." A few seconds later loud knocking came from downstairs. "Police! Open the door." I ran to the hallway and shouted down the stairs. "Up here!" Heavy footsteps rushed inside the house. 2 police officers ran upstairs. "Are you okay?" one of them asked. I nodded quickly. The man was on the roof. The officers ran toward the parents' bedroom and out onto the balcony. Another officer stayed with us. Lucas was still crying. "It's okay," the officer said gently. "You're safe now." After a few minutes the other officers returned. "He ran off into the woods behind the house," one said. My stomach felt weak. They didn't catch him. Later that night the police called Lucas's parents and explained everything. They came home immediately. Sarah hugged Lucas tightly. David kept thanking me for protecting him. But the police discovered something that made the whole situation even scarier. The man hadn't just broken into the house that night. He had been hiding there for hours. They found muddy footprints in the basement. They also found an open window down there, which meant he had climbed into the house earlier in the evening. Before I even arrived. Before Lucas went to bed. Before anyone noticed. He had been hiding somewhere inside the house. Watching. Waiting. That was the first terrifying babysitting story I ever experienced. But it wasn't the last. A few months later, I took another babysitting job. Different house. Different family. Different night. At first everything seemed normal again. But that night would turn into the second scary babysitting horror story of my life. And that one started when the little girl I was babysitting looked at the hallway and said something that made my blood run cold. "Emily," she whispered. "Why is there a woman standing in the kitchen, staring at you?"